Hey, what's going on, guys? Ty here, Bench Clear Media. Hope you're having an awesome week. So, look, great interview for you today. Ryan from Breakout Cards. If you haven't checked out his channel, go check it out. He does an amazing job of putting out consistent, unique content, and you'll hear him talk about it. I mean, he pours himself into this. He's trying to see 52 shows. He's already at like 45. And he goes to these card shows, puts videos together, recaps them. And for guys like me who don't travel to card shows as much, it's just a great opportunity to go see kind of the vibe from different shows. And we talk a little bit about that too. Let me get his perspective on it, but some very well thought out, helpful content. And it was a really good conversation. This guy, I'm so impressed with the 23-year-old being able to be as mature and as articulate as him. You can just tell he's going to make some waves in the hobby if he sticks with it. And I really appreciated his time today. So go check him out. Also, be sure to subscribe, like what we're doing here. We have some really good stuff coming out this week with our 1.5 million card collection purchase, some other things that we're wanting to show you that I think you'll like. And yeah, man, some good stuff, some good times. It's a good time to be alive. Bench Card Media. It's not that serious. Check out a word from our sponsors, and then we'll jump into the awesome interview with Ryan at Breakout Cards.
Having trouble managing your valuable collection and finding price transparency in the sports card market? Me too. That's why I use CardHedge. CardHedge is a brilliant price analysis and collection management tool. Track all your grades across PSA, CSG, HGA, SGC, BGC, and as well as your raw cards. CardHedge pulls their research from sites like eBay, StarStock, MySlabs, and Golden Auctions. You want an accurate picture of the sports card market? Yeah, me too. With over tens of thousands of cards in their system, CardHedge is the definitive sports card price guide. Quickly search by card, player, or set. Sort by price or percentage change. It has a lot of awesome advanced features. So what are you waiting for? Join today for only $14.99.
What's going on, Ryan? How you doing, man?
Good. How about yourself?
Good. Sunday afternoon. How's your fantasy football team? Do you do fantasy football? You have to do fantasy.
No, I don't. I don't have enough time.
What?
I'm so busy with everything.
You're so busy going to every show in the entire United States. You don't have time to play fantasy football?
Pretty much.
Well, man, I'm excited to have you on today. I'll admit, I'm not a big watch other people's YouTube content. It's hard enough to put your own stuff out, let alone spend time watching others. You're one of the few guys I actually check out the videos for because I love seeing all the shows you go to, your commentary. It's great. You do a great job. You're very authentic. So
thank you. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, man. So let's start with this. What got you into collecting, dude? I want to know your personal side. What do you love to collect? Because you're a vintage dude, which is crazy for your age. You love vintage stuff.
Yeah, I love pre-war. So I was kind of born into cards. My dad owned an LCS in the 90s. Okay. And unfortunately, that ended up folding. He ended up selling the business to his business partner. And he fully got out of cards, sold some really, really nice vintage cards, like Koufax rookies that were near mint, some nice mantles and everything like that. And when I was born, I was an excuse for him to get back into cards. So as soon as I was born, I was getting taken, when I was really, really small, to shows, different card shops, flea markets. And I started learning cards really, really young compared to most people like that. And continue to collect, obviously, through elementary school, middle school. And I always kind of like the old stuff because my dad always warned me about what happened in the junk wax era. He's like, look, history repeats itself. You think these companies aren't going to go out there and produce the same exact amounts that they did in the past? You're wrong. And how often is there going to be players out there that perform at the same level? Every year, it seems like there's 3 or 4 different prospects that everyone goes crazy about. And if you look at every single year, what happens to these players, some of them will have good careers, right? They could be Hall of Famers, but they might be low-end Hall of Famers. And that initial hype just continues to die down over there. On top of that, there's other players that have 2 or 3 good seasons, completely gone out of the league. And there's others that don't even feel they'll live up to their prospect hype. So are you going to go on the more conservative route and invest in players or buy into sports cards of players that have achieved all-time feats, all-time greats? Or are you going to go after chasing a new player every single year and the hopes that they can become that type of player? And there's so much to collect with these type of players. It's not just the rookie card itself. Players have a lot of different variations, and it's fun to go and research that type of things. But my main PC, I'd say, is really pre-war, not just baseball. I collect a bunch of different sports pre-war side things, and it's fun just researching everything.
This is going to be a fun conversation. How old are you? 25, 24?
23.
23. Okay. This is going to be great. I love your perspective already. You can just tell like you're thinking about the hobby a lot differently than a lot of new collectors are. So you're doing a lot of, we'll go back to your PC here in a little bit. So you're doing a lot of stuff, obviously, because you're going around to shows. What's your goal this year to hit how many shows?
52. I'm at 47 right now.
You're at number 47?
Number 47. Next weekend, I'm hitting 2 shows. I'm going to one in Minneapolis and one in Orlando. So I'll be at 49 then. And I don't know if I'm going to the one the week after or not because I have a marathon Sunday. If not, I'll just finish off the last ones in December.
So we're going to dig into all this because I'm fascinated by the idea behind it and everything. But you take your perspective, right? You know, like all these hot rookies, hot prospects. Sounds like your dad taught you well. A lot of them, most of them are going to fade. When you go to these shows and you're talking to kids your age and you hear them hyping up stuff, what's your typical reaction to their modern perspective versus you saying, hey, look, guys, like here's the reality of the sports car world? Do they receive it well?
Look, like a lot of people are branded to the hobby and they don't understand that all the passes there. I mean, I see with a lot of people, they go in the hobby, they'll buy all the ultra modern stuff just because they don't realize cards were made in the 1800s or 1900s. And slowly, as they learn more about the hobby, you see people now go into the 90s inserts. People are going crazy over the PMG cards, which are cool, but there's so much more to collecting than that. And that's what some people are considering vintage cards at this point. But I think as the hobby expands, I mean, we saw such an influx of people these last 2 or 3 years. It's so hard to gain that knowledge of the cards from the early 1900s or even the 1800s without knowing the players. A lot of people get into cards from watching sports on TV. They want to collect the icons from that side of things. So I'm not against them collecting new cards. I kind of show them my stuff and they're like, oh, this is so cool. I didn't even know this existed. Do they research it more? Maybe, maybe not. But I've seen a lot more younger people getting into vintage cards. It's pretty cool.
Yeah, that is very, very cool. So your dad then, so you were an excuse to get back in the hobby. Is he still a collector? Does he have a pretty sweet little collection?
He does. We have a collection together and he still goes to card shows as well.
Oh, that's awesome. That's awesome. Does he regret closing down the card shop?
Yeah. I wouldn't say the card shop per se, but he regrets liquidating everything because if you imagine some like a Koufax rookie as a 8 or a 9, or I wouldn't say 10 because it's pretty much impossible to get a 10 on some of those really old vintage cards, but you're getting 8s and 9s on some of those classic rookie cards or Bulls or Mays. It kind of stings if you look at the prices now.
No doubt. No doubt. It's crazy to think about. Like take for Jordan, for instance, right? Like the PSA 8s, PSA 9s. I mean, PSA 9s are what, 15 grand now. PSA 10s 5 years ago, people were like, whatever, right? This is what it's just a card.
You know what the funny thing is though, and just talking to a lot of dealers and people in the hobby forever, people had such a hard time getting rid of those 86 Fleer boxes back in the 80s or even 90s. They're considered junk wax. And the funny thing too is the 86 Fleer Jordan isn't even his best, or like, oh, now it is monetary wise, but it's not technically his true rookie card. He had his star card in 84. Then he had the Nike in 85, also the Prism sticker in 85, another star in 85 before 86, which he has a star and also Fleer as well, and as a Fleer sticker. So he has a lot of different cards out there at the same time or even before the Fleer. It just has gotten the modern hype of everyone getting into cards with these last few years pumping up the price.
No, you're exactly right. You could point at basically every player and say, okay, the hobby has decided this is his rookie card. It's probably not his most scarce card, and it's probably not his true rookie. But the hobby has decided that's his card. It's funny how that works sometimes.
Yeah, it's like the Hannes Wagner. I know he's a few cards before then. I think he has one. He has a few cabinet cards. I think he has one also in 1899, and he has the E107, which I like better than the T206 because it's just as scarce, if not scarcer, and kind of cool. It's 1903, I think, as well.
Just 120 years ago. That's it. I mean, come on. That's what's the Holy Grail card that you want, that you think you can attain and get? Yeah.
Ooh, that's a tough one. I'd probably say the Ted Williams rookie card because I think Ted Williams is one of the best players out there. 39 play ball is still relatively affordable compared to what he did. If you look at the prices, I think Williams was a much better ball player than Mickey Mantle. Obviously, Mickey Mantle is kind of the face of the baseball card movement, especially with the 1952 Topps card and how well that's been doing in recent years. But I really like Ted Williams. I mean, between him also being a vet in the war, missing all those years, still hitting 521 home runs, having 2 Triple Crowns, I believe, and also the 407 year. I mean, what did he not do?
Right. Yeah, I'm working on a deal right now to get a 54 Bowman. Williams, and it's
They're
super
cool.
iconic card. That's awesome. What card do you have now? That's if someone comes over and they're like, "Hey, Ryan, show me your favorite card." What card do you immediately grab?
Yeah, so my favorite would be, and I got this at a trade at a card show. I'll tell you the story. Is a Walter Johnson T206, and is the overprint back as a portrait. Now, this kind of shows you like the card show grind. If you work hard at a card show, you can end up attaining it.
Yeah.
So I went to a Dallas card show, I think it was like 2 or 3 times ago, and I noticed this guy had a Walter Johnson a portrait there as a 2 with an MK, because why is MK is the card had a stamp on the back. If people don't know about this, a lot of dealers before there was top loaders would stamp their cards that say, okay, this is my own cards. It's a little bit piece of card collecting history. If you see an older card and it has a stamp on the back and obviously it's aged well, like you can pretty much say it's real because you've been knowing it's been around at least since the 70s and 80s. But and it was a 2MK, not to go off a tangent. And I saw the card, and the guy said he would be willing to do a trade later on in the day if it didn't sell. So I went around the show trying to find vintage pieces and different modern cards as well, finding deals there. And I ended up getting about like $1,700 worth of cards, finding things that were underpriced, and ended up trading all that for the Walter Johnson too. And that's now my holy grail card because it was underpriced already as a 2MK, especially with the back. It's not the rarest back, but it's like a medium scarcity, and plus it's a Walter Johnson portrait, one of the pitchers that people consider the greatest of the game.
Yeah. So a couple months ago, I was telling Mike on an episode, guy we do shows with, there's a book called The Glory of Their Times. I don't know if you've read it or listened to it.
I have not.
So as a baseball fan, definitely a book I would recommend. So it's a Lawrence Ritter goes back and interviews like players from the 20s, 1910, 1920, 1930, and the Audible book, it's actually the actual audio interviews with these players. And I brought up to Mike, I'm like, this crazy to me. Consistently, player after player would say, he would ask the question, "Who's the greatest pitcher you ever faced?" And they would all say Walter Johnson, and they would have stories of like them being up to bat and like just not even being remotely close to being able to touch Walter Johnson's stuff. And most of his stuff was just a fastball, right? You just blow people away. By far the best pitcher in that era. Not even close. Maybe the best pitcher of all time. But
and I know a lot of people, at least on the modern perspective, say, "Oh, Walter Johnson was only throwing, let's say, 85 or 90 miles an hour. That's nothing in today's game." But yeah, look at the training they had back then compared to today. If we had all advanced analytics, if we had breakdowns of mechanics, if we were like, okay, we changed also different baseball as well back then too, different dimensions from the mounds. Like there's so much different about the game back then. Looking at how dominant he was in his era is the thing to look at with these players.
No, for sure. And when guys complain about speed, I say, guys, these dude pitched like 90 games a year and they threw 200 pitches every game. Yeah. They didn't complain about injuries. Like these guys were just machines.
Yeah. I mean, look at Chapman. He started out at 105 and he still throws upper 90s. He doesn't throw 105 anymore. But I mean, like arms wear out over time.
Right. Right. No, that's cool, man. What a great card. What an outstanding card. So when you go, so what's the idea behind the 52 card? Like what you want to go to 52 card shows, you're almost there. What was the premise of that forming and how did you fund this? I see this activity and I'm thinking I know you got an 8 to 5 job, but that's not a cheap endeavor. No, tell me the origins of this.
Yeah, honestly, I just started going to shows every weekend. I didn't even think I was going to hit 52 at one point. And then I think I was on a podcast. They're like, "Man, you go to a lot of shows. How many shows you're at this year?" I have no idea. I started counting. I was like, geez, I think it was like upper 20s or low 30s on that podcast. I was like, geez. And it was still early in the year. I was like, all right, well, I guess I'm going after 52 at this point. It'd be kind of cool to do that. So that's kind of how that started on that. The funding way, I really put most of my money that I make from work back into the YouTube side of things and traveling as well. And then I do flip a lot of cards at the show as well. I do keep cards for my PC, like the Walter Johnson, some other cards as well that you can't just replace those type of cards, or I think they're going to go up over long-term time. So I'll keep those cards for my PC, but things I'm not super attached to, I'll end up flipping it and then putting it straight back into the card show budget.
Gotcha. That makes sense. I was kind of curious about that because you're obviously wheeling and dealing a lot of cards at the shows.
And what I do is I take cheap flights. So I'll go as bad as it is, I'll take the Spirit flights that are like $50 or $60 or the Frontier flights. And then I'll try to find some hotel deals. And every once in a while, there's a few different people that are like, hey, if you go out the show, I'll cover your hotel. Or some of the card show owners are like, hey, I'll cover your flight if you come out to my show that weekend. And that really helps. Like anything is like 50, $60. Like it goes a long way, especially when you're going to a show every weekend.
Heck yeah. It doesn't matter if you fly Spirit with all the turbulence. You got Pelican cases now, right? They can protect your cards and
Pretty much.
they'll survive. You won't if you crash. That's
Yeah.
the thing.
So,
Those cases.
so literally have a backpack. I have my case in the backpack and then put a little bit of clothes in there. And that's what I bring for weekend. I'll fly out super, super early on Saturday morning, like 5 a.m., 6 a.m. So I get in the airport early, and then I'll leave a show at Sunday, like 12 o'clock.
I love it. That's efficiency at its finest right there. All right. So let's talk about the findings here. Cause I mean, each show has its intricacies, right? You're learning things from each show, but when you walk into a show, what's kind of the first thing that you look for that kind of like stands out to you? Or maybe you just go right for this. What do you kind of gravitate towards right at the beginning?
Yeah, I mean, every show is different. I try to look for dealers that I haven't seen before because that means it's new inventory. One of the things I really didn't like continuing to go to the same local shows, and one of the reasons why I travel is the amount of inventory refresh. A lot of these dealers aren't going to get a new inventory every single week, especially on the local side of things. But when you get to travel, you get to see all these brand new dealers, and these dealers are going to have cards that you haven't seen before. So, and the thing about the card shows is a lot of these dealers don't put their cards online, whether it's like an eBay or My Slabs or even like Twitter sales or Facebook groups. Like this is all fresh, brand new inventory that isn't available online. And some cards you're just not going to find online. It's a card show only type of card. And if you can go around and find those cards for your PC, that's like that. Like I'd say, for example, I was in the Chantilly show a few weeks ago and I got a John Sullivan 1887 Allen Ginter. I've been tracking that card for 6 months and I came across a GAI 5.5 and I was like, I can't pass that card up. I've been looking for it for such a long time.
You're gonna crack the slab, resubmit it?
Honestly, eventually, but there's no reason to. It's gonna stay in my collection. So it's already in a case, starting a slab. I'll just put it there. If I want to get it slabbed as a PSA or SGC or BG or BVG or whatever else, I'll do it. But I just don't want to spend the money.
Yeah, no, that's an interesting point though, and it totally makes sense. You see enough shows, right? You're tired of the old inventory. I can only imagine that gets frustrating. Yeah. What would you say the vibe has been like? I mean, 40 something shows. You've seen kind of the very high beginning of the year to the ups and downs that we've experienced in the hobby. How has that kind of been reflected in the card shows? Have you seen a different vibe across shows and different attitudes?
Yeah, I've noticed quite a few different things happening this year. So first, I saw the explosion. Oh, I saw that it's still explosion of the hobby. I see people in like backpacks dropping like 10K cash on the table and just buying up all your prisms like earlier this year. And it's crazy to me that people are holding that much cash in their backpack. But you have kids, I'd say probably my age, going around there dropping that much cash and that type of stuff. I think a lot of it comes from the sneakerheads. And another thing I noticed early on in this year was the explosion of the shows. So instead of having one or two local shows, now I see 5 or 6. Everyone wants to put on a card show, just like everyone wants to build out a grading company. And it's flooded too much because now you'd have 2 or 3 card, or like in Florida, for example, one weekend, there's 7 card shows throughout the state of Florida on a single weekend. You can't support that because now what happens is your normal people, not me, are going to go to a show maybe once a month or once every 2 months. You can't go have a show every single weekend in the same area. And on top of it, now the dealers, they're not going to go to 7 different shows in one weekend. They have to sit at one show because they're going to do 2 days at the show, a Saturday and a Sunday, or a Friday, Saturday, however the show configuration is built out. So now they're at the shows, you have a lack of dealers, you have a lack of foot traffic, and people going and get the impression that this card show is dead. But the real issue is there's just a flood of shows. Everyone thinks that they can build out and promote a show and get the people in the door and the dealers, and you just can't do that at this point. Another thing I've noticed is I've even tabled a few times is people now want to get the price that they paid for cards back in March or April when they were really high. Like, well, I paid $1,000 for this card, so I'll do $800 now, even though a comp is now at $200 or $300. And you just got to tell them, like, look, you're going to have to lose money if you want to sell that card. I can't give you a comp from months ago. And for a lot of new people, they're just trying to cash out, get their money back when it was at the high because they didn't sell. And I've talked to other dealers too. They're kind of having that issue as well when people are going around trying to sell their cards. An issue sometimes when you're trying to get new inventory, people just want to get the old comps on cards.
That's interesting. Yeah, that's something we definitely noticed. I've been to a few shows this year, and most recently the Las Vegas Beckett Industry Summit. I don't know if you were at that
I
or
wanted
not.
to. It just
Yeah,
didn't hit the lights.
yeah. But it's the typical dealers, right? And we put a video together about it, and it was the same thing. It's just like on camera, we're showing you comps, guys. Nah, we're gonna hold off. We want to get 100 billion, 50% more because we paid this much for it. It's like it doesn't work that way. It doesn't work that way. Technology has made things a lot more transparent. What have you noticed on the, I guess, the community side of it, right? I mean, of course, the dealers and guys that are in there flipping the prices and stuff dictate a lot of, but what about the community side of it? Have you felt like the community's become vibrant? Have you seen a drop off the last 3 or 4 months and kind of the idea of community in the car world? What's your take on that?
I've honestly seen more like trade nights popping up, whether at the card shops or right after card shows on that side thing, which is a really, really good bonding thing because now you have your LCS tied with the card show. And also you have people at the card show that want those extra hours to make some deals happen. And I've really enjoyed that side of things. Because I mean, if you can go back 5, 6 years ago, besides the national, which I mean, I've only gone to one national before the explosion. There just wasn't many trade nights.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a good point. I don't remember that being a thing at all.
It wasn't.
Shoot, 10 years ago, I don't remember that ever being mentioned.
Except for the national, because I remember watching some YouTube videos on, I think it was like Card Collector that started some of the trade night. I could be wrong, but I remember watching his videos about some of the different trade night type of things. And then now it seems like a lot of like the big local shows or even like any national show, there people always ask, oh, is there a trade night? Is there a trade night? Is there a trade night? And we kind of built out this thing where all the hobbyists can hang out and trade cards after a show. Unfortunately, a lot of the older dealers or like vintage dealers don't really show up to those yet. I hope that does end up changing a little bit because that's the type of stuff I like. But it's all the young guys who are like, all right, let's keep moving. Let's make some deals happen.
The problem is the vintage guys, like there's only a limited supply of stuff to trade, right? They got to trade out of that stuff to go get modern stuff, which none of those guys are going to do, right? They're smart. You're smart.
Well, I sometimes do that, but it just depends on the deal. Like if you can turn a vintage card that's $100 into $150, and then you can turn that $150 into a $200 vintage card, it could be worth it.
Yeah, that's a good point. That's a good segue. Let's talk a little bit about your strategy. Share what you can. I don't want you to feel like you have to share much. When you're going to a card show and you know that you're going to flip cards, you're going to try to make some money out of the deal. What's kind of your approach to things? Are you looking for quantity? You looking for vastly underpriced stuff? Kind of what's your perspective when you head in?
Yeah. So my first round, I'll look for like vastly underpriced things because there is those out there, stuff that has weird comps and things that I know back of my head that are just underpriced. I mean, when you go to so many shows and you've been in the hobby for such a while, you can go look at a showcase and you're like, yeah, that's underpriced. I'm going to go buy that card. It doesn't matter if it's modern or if it's vintage. And then later on the show, I'll try to do some bulk lots as well. I have my friend who helps sell that stuff and also runs the channel, Steven. So he does a lot of things on Whatnot, but we'll put our slabs also on my slabs and kind of do both of those to move the things, and Twitter sales help as well.
Gotcha. Yeah, that makes sense. Whatnot? We'll have to talk about that. Whatnot in my slabs. That's interesting. You didn't say eBay.
No, I don't use eBay as much because it's so much with the fees. I mean, you're looking at 12-15% on fees. For my slabs, it's 1%. Whatnot, I don't know what the percentage, but you get a lot of people that come in and buy stuff.
Yeah. We've actually been thinking about on the channel doing some stuff and Whatnot. So yeah, I think the fees are like 8.2% or something like that. Something pretty low.
I think on there they do the shipping labels for you. I don't know for sure because I don't sell in there often. It's my friend, but
yeah, gotcha. Impressive. So what about negotiating? And you, for those that haven't watched your stuff, go check out obviously your channel because you record a lot of your negotiations. But what have you learned over the years, over the 40 shows that you've been to about negotiating at car shows with dealers? Any tips you want to give folks?
I mean, the more deals you do with the dealer, the more that they're going to give you that deal because they don't want to lose you as a customer. I mean, like 5 or 10% on a card for a long-term customer is worth it for them because they're like, all right, I know this guy's going to come back in another month or another 2 months and continue to buy with me. So it starts coming to a certain point where you even have to negotiate the people. They're like, hey, this is my sticker price. I'll knock off 20% for you since I know you've bought for me all the time. And at that point, like, are you going to negotiate already when you're getting 20% off of a deal? You're like, okay, cool. I'm already working with this dealer. Let's make this happen. With newer dealers, like, if you want to get a bulk lot, you just explain to them, like, hey, I want to buy a lot of cards. I want to sell these cards. Are you willing to bulk it out at 20 or 15% off, or what can you work with me on that? Some of them are going to say, nope, I have to do full sticker price. Others will work with you like, hey, perfectly fine with me. And it's talking to the dealer. Just don't go out there and expect them to give you things automatically. You have to build that connection with someone.
That is an outstanding tip. It's something that's so underrated. Using your mouth and communicating, talking to the dealer. They actually are real people.
Don't get mad at someone if they're over comps. Like, just show them and like have that conversation with them. Like, hey, I bought from you a lot. I'm interested in this card. I just don't think we're on the same price range. Maybe you bought it a little high, maybe not. Do you have room on this? Here's why. And you show them a comp. And a lot of times they'll be like, hey, you're right. It's gone down a little bit. I might have to take a loss to liquidate this card. Other dealers like, I'd rather just hold it at this time. No worries, right? No one's forcing you to sell a card.
Yeah. No, that's a great point. Do you feel like when you're coming up with the camera, do you feel like that helps you in negotiating or it hurts you? Originally,
I think it hurt because a lot of the vintage dealers weren't used to it. Yeah. But I think over time, like a lot of them are okay with it because a lot of people are now going on to YouTube like, oh, that's so cool. I'm on the YouTube videos. So it does help a bit.
I made it on Breakout Cards. I did the deal.
It's funny though. You have some of the dealers that post that on like the vintage Facebook groups, and I like it. It's like, yeah, you want to be on a video? Sure. Like, just ask me. I'll show you your pickups at the show or anything like that. Like, have fun with it.
Yeah, no, that's cool. I totally agree. Yeah, you're right. The last year has made this so normal now. It's like if you don't have a camera and you're recording something, you actually feel out of place, right?
Originally the phone, and then upgrade to the camera. People are like,
that's right.
Phone, and like, don't have the money to spend on the camera. It just slowly upgrades.
Heck yeah. How close are you to being full time at this? It sounds like you're doing enough quantity. You probably thought about it.
I don't want to do this full time. I want to always have it kind of like something in the backside of things, unless like I did a data type job with this, or just, I don't know. Like for me, I want to continue pursuing the data because I think it's really interesting and it helps with the cards. I think I have everything balanced right now where I can still travel to card shows on the weekends. I have the balance right now where I can still write and also I can sell cards. So I don't think anything really needs a change on that perspective. The only thing would be like hiring out an editor to help with the editing because I'm out working on videos till 1 or 2 o'clock in the morning early on in the week. But besides that, a lot of it's kind of automated at this point.
Yeah. I don't want to be doing this full time. Wow. You're too mature, man. You're too mature for your age. No, that's a really good perspective though. I really do. I think it would suck the joy out of it is what I heard. It would suck the joy out of the collecting side of it.
Because now, like, at least for me now, you have to look at it at ends meet every single week. I have to make at least, let's say $52,000 is a number that makes you happy at the end of the year. Like everyone has their own specific numbers, but now you have to make $1,000 a week between doing YouTube, between flipping cards at a show or any other side gigs that you have with sports cards versus you work a job and then you spend that money on the cards at the end of the weekend and you always can get raises through your job as well. Or even like if you start your own business on the side that's loosely related or start your own business in another niche, like there's so many opportunities out there that you can still do this on the side and have it as fun as a hobby.
No, that's great. That's great. Great perspective. What are your other hobbies? Do you have other hobbies?
Yeah. So I play the guitar and I also run. So before all the card shows, I used to do ultra marathons. That's kind of slowed down a little bit. I kind of got out of shape from going all the different shows. So I have a marathon coming up in 2 weeks to kind of kick me back into it. But those are my 2 other hobbies.
I like how you casually say you have a marathon in a few weeks. Like anybody could do that.
I don't think anyone can do a marathon. You just, even if you have to walk it a little bit, like just go out there and do it. I think it's possible.
Yeah. All right. What's your best marathon time?
So I did a 3:17 last year. I think it was, 3:17 last year. And my farthest run is I did a 100K around UCF. So 62 miles when I was graduating because our graduation got canceled. And I was like, all right, I want to run an ultra marathon around the campus. So we have like a 2.4 mile loop and I just kept running it till I did 62 miles.
Holy moly. That's incredible.
So I did that. Did a 50 miler in the Everglades with a run. It was fun.
Fun. It definitely does not sound fun. What's the farthest you've been to a show so far? You've been up to Montana, Idaho?
I want to go to those states. I know there's some local type shows out there, so I'll eventually do that. One of my goals is eventually do all 50 states with that. But the farthest out I've been to Iowa, I've been to Wisconsin, and I've been out to Houston. So those are far away.
All right. Well, when you come up to Idaho or Spokane, Washington, or Montana, I will be your host, and we'll make sure we have a good time.
Oh, I saw there's a show in Montana. I think it's what, like April or May or something like that.
Yeah. You thinking about it?
I'm thinking about it.
All right.
Be
All
fun.
right. We'll talk offline about that.
All right, let's do it.
Yeah. So you mentioned data, and I'm curious to know, because data means a lot of things, obviously, but kind of the grandiose question, like what is the data showing you about sports cars right now? And there's another channel you guys have, I'll link to in the show notes as well. But what's the data showing you? What are you concerned? Are you excited?
I'm not really concerned. I mean, what people have to take in perspective is how fast car prices have risen in the past few years. Like, there has to be corrections. A market just does not continue to go up and up and up without any sort of correction. And especially modern basketball, because if you even look back 5-6 years ago, a lot of your cards now that are $10,000, $100,000, they were nowhere near that price.
Yeah.
Historically, 5-6 years ago, basketball cards were cheap. And I didn't really get into basketball cards because I always thought that the people that collected basketball cards and the sneakerheads, they're like two different types of people. And now we saw all the sneakerheads go into the card hobby and kind of influence that in general, where it's all hype, 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 hype. Yeah. And, I was wrong on that perspective.
Yeah. So when you say you're not concerned, because relatively speaking, 24 months ago, prices are still up, I think is what I heard.
Yeah.
What about just in terms of data combined with the things you're picking up, the vibe you're picking up at shows? You feel like the sports card market is heading into a kind of a healthy spot in 2022. You feel really good about it?
Absolutely. I mean, look how the card shows have changed since the last few years as well. I mean, sure, there's the local card shows. There's a few national type shows. I mean, there's the national, obviously, and then there's like your big shows like Chantilly and Philly. But now we're seeing shows pop up everywhere. Dallas Card Show a few years ago didn't really exist to the extent of where it is today. Yeah. The Wisconsin Dells Card Show didn't exist to the extent it is today as well. And we're seeing these shows that are 300-400 tables that are packed. I mean, the fact that these are packed with dealers and people trying to buy, and there's excitement and there's trade nights, we're in a great space for the hobby. Maybe awesome. Maybe modern basketball is down quite a bit, but it's kind of expected where it was.
Yeah. What has you most excited about the hobby heading into next year?
Ooh, most excitement. Honestly, just the card shows being alive and the amount of big shows out there. It's so much fun to travel to them and meet everyone.
Yeah. What about on the flip side? What kind of has you most concerned? What's the biggest concern you have?
Most concerned? So I'd say the people that are just focused on the monetary side of things, and if they don't make money, they quit the hobby. I mean, if someone bought into the hobby at the high earlier this year and looks at their collection of Lucas or LeBrons or whoever else they ended up buying, and I'm not just single out basketball, I just know it's gone down the most, but they look at their card prices and they're just looking at for money and they're like, damn, my card went from $1,500 to $400. I hate this hobby and now quit. When if they looked at more of the grand scheme of things and kind of went after other things as well, they might not be down that much or actually enjoy the hobby because there's so much more to it.
I can dig that for sure. A new collector comes up to you, and this probably happens all the time. Honestly, it shows and they're like, hey, how do we get in? How do I get into this and not completely lose all my money? What advice do you give them? Enjoy the hobby. Obviously, enjoy the hobby.
Yeah. So, I mean, after enjoying your hobby, do your own research. Don't listen to what other people say. Don't even listen to what I say. Like, do your own research, find what you enjoy, and stick with it. Because once you do, you'll start expanding your knowledge.
Love it. Love it. Love it. Love it. It's the most underrated set right now in sports cars.
Underrated set.
Anything come to mind? If you don't have one, it's okay.
I mean, let's see. I'd say probably a T205 card's really, really cool with the gold borders. I mean, we see how the T206 cards have exploded. The T205s have gone up as well, but I mean, not to the same extent. And then another one would be kind of 1951 Bowman, because you have the Willie Mays. You also have I think you have Mays, Mansell. There's another one that said it's I think Whitey Ford's in there, isn't he? 51. Let me see real quick. Hold on. I'm pretty sure he's 51. He is 51. So yeah, you have Whitey Ford, you have Mays and Mansell in that set. And with the explosion of Mantell's 52 tops, which people always think is a rookie card, the 51's still way behind.
What about let's say kind of the modern day vintage. Let's go 70s to 90s. Any sets that you really like? Stuff that you
I like the 75s, especially the minis.
okay.
I haven't
Yeah.
seen the minis go up that much, and they were a very scarce. I mean, they were scarcer. I wouldn't say very scarce, but a lot
Yeah.
scarcer than the full size cards. And back in the hobby, like way before everything online took off, people were always saying, "Oh, the 75 minis should be super expensive cards," and I just really haven't seen the Yao and the Brett really take off where they should be.
Yeah. I dig it. Oh, Brett's my guy. So I can appreciate that. I've been sucked in recently to the Topps Tiffany's from 86 to 89. And I forget how scarce those were. Like 86, I think the print run was like
Dude,
5,000 or less.
yeah, they're like, so it depends if they're Bowman or Tops, but they're from like 2 to 5,000. I
Yeah.
have one up this weekend, so I eventually want to get my full Tiffany rookie run. Just because if you look at the junk wax era and the print runs on the normal stuff compared to the Tiffany's, they're still attainable. I mean, there's some players where the PSA 10 of the Tops is cheaper than like the PSA 9 of a Tiffany. I'd take the Tiffany all day over that from the scarcity standpoint.
For sure. I was actually just looking like the bonds and stuff. I mean, you're talking like $8,000 now for a PSA 10 Tiffany. I'm thinking, should have paid more attention to that 5 years ago.
Made the mistake at National. I could have traded a LeBron PSA 9 $100 for a Tiffany Bonds 9, and they were kind of similar at the comps. And it was a friend that was trying to make that happen, and I was like, I'm not going to pay $100 over that. LeBron has gone down more, and Tiffany Bonds has stayed neutral. It's like, well, I made that mistake. Oh well. But I have a lot of other Tiffany's at this point. I want to eventually get a Bonds.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting because it's the era that we grew up in, especially the era I grew up in, right? The Griffeys, the Bonds, I mean, a lot of guys from 86, McGuire's that it's just so much junk wax. It's hard to like pinpoint a rookie. Tiffany's typically is your way to add some scarcity outside of just grading the snot of all these cards, right? You see the population reports, and it's just mind blowing.
It is
mind blowing.
And the thing is, the Tiffany's didn't really get out to the general public because I personally believe like a lot of the card store owners ended up getting them and just kept the full sets.
Interesting. I'd love to know a card shop owner's perspective on that.
I do too, but that's what I've heard from other people. They're like, "Oh, the general public never got the Tiffany sets because the card store owners always just held them for themselves." It's same like the Fleer update that has the Roger Clemens rookie and the Kirby Puckett. Those never really got out to the general public, even though like you look at the print run on them, it's still pretty high, but those cards are so expensive because they never left really the card show or dealer hands.
Yeah. That's the stuff that fascinates me. That it goes kind of under the radar until all of a sudden explodes in price. And you're like, darn it, that was available to us.
Yeah.
You know, that was there for the taking.
Well, I picked up a Smoltz this weekend for $40, and it's like I'm gonna throw that into a box, and I'm not gonna look at it for another 10 years. Like for $40 to pick up a graded item itself and a Tiffany rookie is like no brainer.
Oh, for sure. Yeah, because here's the reality is everyone's like, oh, you can go grade that stuff. It's printed, like crazy. Well, grading's never going to be cheap again, right? It's going to be $25 to $30 to grade a card from here on out, period. Yep. So to get that card graded, now is the time to go buy those cards because the population report's not going to just blow up like it did this year.
Plus, I mean, how many ungraded Tiffany's are there out there?
Probably not a lot.
No.
Yeah, probably not a lot. Yeah, good stuff. Good stuff. All right, so little rapid fire for you here. You're in the grocery store. What's the candy item you grab first?
Candy. Man, I don't know.
Like candy. What's the junk food you grab? What do you grab? Like you need a snack.
The snack side of things. Oh, let's see. I sometimes like frozen pizzas, which is kind of weird, but I kind of like those like brick oven frozen pizzas just as a quick lunch.
You already talked about marathon, so I assumed you weren't a junk food eater, right? But you can burn the calories of a frozen pizza off in a couple seconds.
Back when I was training fully, easily. Right now, I stopped training as much, so I got a little bit of the COVID weight,
Oh, whatever. Metabolism of a 23-year-old. Favorite sports movie of all time?
Field of Dreams is really good. I enjoy that one.
Okay. What's the band do you like listening to when you're sorting cards?
The band I like listening to a lot of Trivium and Alter Bridge. So I like metal music. I don't look like someone listening to a lot of metal music, but I really like heavy stuff.
Nice. You put your hair down, you take the gel out, and you just headbang while you're sorting.
I love that type of stuff. Even like when I travel to shows, or card shows, I'll also try to see concerts at night if it ends up lining up.
Oh, that's a good idea. That
So
really, yeah, really.
with that. Unfortunately, when I went to Dallas last time, I was going to end up going to see Slipknot right after the show, but I got suckered into going to trade night instead. I've seen Slipknot already a few times, so it wasn't a huge deal, but it'd been kind of cool to see them in Dallas.
We need a couple key bands like to promote the hobby, do some concerts at shows. I think it'd be a pretty lucrative thing.
Yeah, I know. I think Pop Evil singer is into cards, I've heard, but that's the only one I know at this moment.
Yeah. Huh. Okay. You have to pick a athlete to go on a card show trip with you. Which athlete do you want spending the weekend with you?
Oh man, it's kind of weird, but I kind of want Nolan Ryan to show up just because I'm named after him, get to meet him, and then go through all the cards. It'd be kind of cool to see his perspective, one of the greatest pitchers of all time.
You get a lot of non-COA autos from him too.
Yeah, not bad on that one.
What about non-sports entertainment figures? Anybody you want to spend the weekend with?
Non-sport wise, man, I could pick anyone from the different bands I listen to. That'd be kind of cool. There's so many different people out there. I'd probably choose a musician, kind of see their perspective.
Yeah.
Or
go ahead. Finish that thought.
Yeah, I was gonna say, or like an ultra runner, someone that runs marathons or anything like that, and do a long run, and go to a show and have fun with it.
Whenever I ask that question, I always think, what would I answer? And for me, it's like, how fun would it be to take like Will Ferrell or like Paul Rudd to a card show and add him into your video? You'd have like nonstop content.
That'd be funny. Take Mr. Beast to a video and just a card show. Makes it. I bought everything at this card show. It goes to a booth. I'll take it all. It goes to another booth. I'll take it all.
That would be a blast. That'd be a blast. Well, man, awesome. It's been really fun talking to you. You have an incredible perspective on the hobby. I love the content you're putting out. I mean, I'm assuming you're going to stick with the shows next year, maybe not to this type of level.
Yeah, I think what I'm going to do next year, I haven't even really planned out even December yet at this point, which is kind of sad, but it's like mid-November. I haven't planned out my December shows, but I think I'm going to continue to more states so I can knock out that 50 goal instead of focusing on going to a show every single weekend. Might skip some of the local stuff and just focusing on going to new markets and trying to continue working on the editing side of things, hire an editor, but also like try to improve it as well, give some feedback on that side and just continue to grow the channel.
Beautiful. Social media, where can people find you?
Yeah, so I have a Twitter, which is Breakout Cards. There's underscore at the end on that one. Also, I have an Instagram, and check out my YouTube channel, Breakout Cards, and also my other channel for analytics, which is Moneyball Cards. So me and there's another data analyst who's the YouTube channel, Sports Card Analytics. Every single week, we take a dive into the data side of cards.
Dig it. All these will be in the show notes. Find the links there. I look forward to connecting with you in Montana in April. Yep. It's going to be fun.
Absolutely. Another state off of there. I know that's going to be one of the harder ones. It's so far away, and I'm going to be happy with that.
It'll be well worth it. Snow melted. It'll be a good time.
And plus, there's a few national parks out there. I don't know how close will be the shows, but it'll be cool.
You're very close. That one's in Butte, I think, right? Is that in Butte, Montana?
I don't remember. I remember
it might be Bozeman
2 weeks ago, and I was like, all right, there's a show in Montana. That's another state I'll knock off.
Heck yeah. Cool. Well, Ryan, man, it's been good. Appreciate the time. Have yourself a great week. All right, man.